And I would tell Chip, "You've got this. Most guys would collapse under this pressure, but you were built for this." This paradigm shift seemed to work, and I know Chip appreciated it. As a parent, as a wife, as a business owner, I simply decided I'm not going to survive anymore. I'm going to thrive. It wasn't some big life-altering change that was difficult to achieve either. It was instantaneous. I just realized that I had a choice to make in every moment, on every day, with every decision. I made that choice when the next glass of milk was spilled, to choose a thriving response rather than the surviving one. And I made that choice when another gigantic bill landed in our mailbox that day after the last of our $100,000 miracle was spent. Was I going to just survive this, or was I going to get with my husband and think this through so we could overcome it together and thrive? I still had my moments, of course, when I'd make the wrong choice and get all fed up and start fussing at the kids or Chip or start beating myself over some mistake I'd made. But the more I kept asking myself that question, the more I focused on thriving, the shorter those just surviving moments seemed to last.
There was something in that low point with our business that drew Joe and I even closer together. My usual optimism seemed to slip. I wasn't sure we were even going to find our way out of this one. But she took on this really positive attitude about everything that really helped me get through it. I always said, when things come against us, we can either turn on each other or we can come together and turn on it. We almost started to reverse roles in that season, when she was telling me that everything was going to be all right, even if she really didn't believe it. We were together, and all of our kids were good, and that was all that mattered. We were thriving. That was the way she put it. To be honest, I wasn't sure I believed her. I was terrified we were about to lose everything. But the irony of all this was just as we hit this low point, where we might slip into bankruptcy at any point, the local newspaper caught wind of the fact that we were doing this development and decided to do a front-page story about us. "What a neat thing you're doing over there on that side of the town. You guys want to be in the paper?" they asked. I didn't focus on all the problems when I talked to that reporter. I just described all the pros of this development and what a great project it was going to be for that area of town and Waco in general. I hoped the buzz would convince someone that one of those Magnolia Villas houses would be perfect for them. That would mean we could actually start building them and maybe even sell a few. The article came out, and a couple of days later, a lawyer in town called me up. He told me that his mother was living out on some acreage outside of town, and she needed a home that was a little bit smaller and closer to everything and easier to manage. We talked for a few minutes about what we were planning, and I told him I thought that one of the villas might be perfect for her. And by the end of the conversation, he said, "I want one." "You want one?" "Yeah, how much is it?" "Well, the model that sounds about right for your mom is $176,000 and change." "Great, okay," he said. "Meet me at my office on Wednesday and bring the contract." Okay, great," I echoed. Now, the way things usually work, somebody wants to read the contract and get a second opinion and then bargain with you a bit on the price. Then even after they sign the agreement to buy the place, there's usually some contingencies, and they have to take whatever down payment they have and go out and secure a loan. It's a long, slow process that sometimes ends with nothing happening at all. So I didn't get my hopes up too much by this point. But I was encouraged, and I was even more encouraged when the front page article resulted in dozens of calls just like this one. I felt like we were really on our way. I went ahead and met with this new lead, and I handed him the contract. He started reading it over. "Let's see. Yep, all right. This is just a simple residential contract. So, you ready?" I said, "Yeah, I'm ready to rock. So you're telling me you're going to be the first villa? Wow, this is a great deal. Thank you, man. I'm so appreciative." "No sweat. I'm going to sign right here, and if you don't mind signing now, I'll have my secretary go make some copies." I signed, and then he handed it to his secretary. I stepped out to use the restroom, and when I came back, I found that this man had written out a check for the full amount and stuck it under the little paper clip on the contract. "All right," he said. "Listen, go build Mom a great house. When you thinking this thing will be ready? You think 4 or 6 months ought to do it?" "Yes, sir, I promise. 4 months if we're lucky, 6 months worst case scenario, if we hit some bad weather or something like that." "Thank you. Your mom is going to be thrilled, I promise." I was walking on air when I left that office. It wasn't just because the attorney's check would allow us to catch up and begin moving forward with the rest of the development. I also knew that selling one of those villas, sight unseen, would be all the kickstart that this thing needed to really get going on the rest of them. People don't like to shop at a strip mall with just one store in it, or eat at a restaurant with only one car in the parking lot. They like to see action, activity, excitement. And that's what we were going to have at the Magnolia Villas. This one build meant that we'd have a crew out there now, visibly working and building a house for everyone to see that passed by on Bosque Boulevard.
Oh, well, we forgot to mention that. This development we were trying to build just happened to be right off Bosque Boulevard, the very same Bosque Boulevard where my shop once stood and where our headquarters for Magnolia Homes was still standing. It felt like something more than coincidence to us that we finally had a heartbeat for Magnolia Villas on that very same artery, just a little further to the west. Anyway, we were so excited about making this the perfect house for that attorney's mother that we wound up calling her and offering to meet with her so I could show her some paint colors and finishes and design the interior exactly to her liking. The woman's name was Peggy, and her son Dale Williams had told Chip she lived on a 40-acre farm about 10 minutes outside of town. The first time we drove up there, we didn't think much of it. It was all about the business of finding out what this sweet woman wanted in her home. She invited us to come back up again and have coffee with her and said we should bring the kids. So we did. This property was pretty. There were so many beautiful oak trees, and 40 acres is 40 acres. It's nice to see all of that open land after living in the crowded way most of us live. But this wasn't a farm with white fences or a beautiful farmhouse up on a bluff somewhere. It was all chain link and barbed wire. This house was old and it needed a lot of work. It just wasn't anything that grabbed Chip or me around the collars and said, "Hey, buy this."
We knew that Peggy would be selling that place once she moved into the new villa, so you'd think the two of us would have been thinking about that property at least as a flip. But we weren't. I mean, I'm usually a love at first sight kind of guy when it comes to houses, and I was not in love with it.
When the kids were all standing there at the end of the second visit, Peggy asked if they'd like to come back and play on her farm again, and all the kids said, "Yes, ma'am." We'd been inside talking to Peggy and hadn't even noticed how much fun they were having in the yard, so we were taken aback by their enthusiasm. "Well," Peggy said, "next time y'all should go down and have a picnic in the pecan orchard." "Pecan orchard?" Chip asked. "There's a cluster of about 2,000-year-old pecan trees out back. It's a real nice spot for a picnic. Go down there next time," Peggy said. So we did. We came back and had a lovely picnic under the pecan trees, and Chip and I both started to see this land in a whole other light. That night, the two of us started dreaming together, just as we'd done back in the early days of our marriage. Can you imagine what it would be like to live on a farm? "Imagine how many chickens I could have on a place like this," Chip said. He sounded like a little kid. "We could get goats, cows even." "You could get goats and cows for sure, as long as I don't have to take care of them." "Oh, Joe, you wouldn't have to lift a finger. I want to take care of them," he said. I, of course, started seeing the possibilities for that old turn-of-the-century farmhouse. I imagined what was under those walls and what those wide plank floors might look like if they were refinished. I imagined an addition. I imagined opening it up, moving the walls around, doing my best to give the kids plenty of space to run and slide in there, the way they did in the hallway at our current house. Then we really got to dreaming. With all of that land, maybe we could put up a cool tree house. I could do more than just a garden. I could build a greenhouse so I could garden year-round. We could get dogs again and let them run around free without worry of neighbors trying to throw us in jail. "I wonder how much they'll want for this place," Chip asked out loud. The fact that he'd said it out loud made it seem like a real possibility, like he was thinking the same thing I was. How perfect this place would be to raise our family. Peggy was kind enough to invite us to use that land any time we wanted. "You don't even need to stop in and say hi, just treat it like your own," she said. So we did. We went up to that property about once a week with the kids, letting them run around and stretch their legs and get fresh air. And as construction on Peggy's villa was nearly complete, Chip found himself completely inundated with Magnolia Villa contracts and prospects. The whole idea that even a small rock can start an avalanche was certainly playing out here. Villas were popping up like crazy. The lots were selling, and contracts were coming in steadily now after all the exposure in the local paper. Things were really rolling. So months after we'd started going to Peggy's farm fairly frequently, Chip finally got the nerve to ask her son what the asking price for the property might be. He said without hesitation that he hoped it'd go for around $500,000. $500,000 that we didn't have and couldn't even hope to borrow. Because of what happened with the villas, our credit was all tapped out. We would be lucky to get a loan on half that much. We couldn't even get new loans for flips or renovations. The glory days of using bank money to finance our dreams seemed to be over. Even with things flying over at the villas, the banks needed more proof that they weren't going to end up stalling out. Still, we fell so in love with the land, not to mention the idea of what I could turn that house into, that we didn't want to let go. Chip kept talking to the attorney, who really acted a bit like a confidant or an advisor in that season. We decided to put our Carriage Square house on the market just in case there was an off chance we could make this work. We figured that with all of the renovations I'd done, we would be able to turn a nice profit, and maybe that would give us enough of a down payment to get a loan. If we could get the attorney and his mother to lower the asking price on the farm, we just might be able to make the deal work. We worked out all the numbers and came to a pretty depressing conclusion. Even if we got our full asking price for the carriage square house, we'd still be well under the asking price they'd hoped for. The thing is, we'd actually grown pretty close to our attorney friend and his beautiful mother through all of those visits and talks. We learned that he was about our parents' age and he loved that farm and had all sorts of fond memories of his dad there. The farm was called Covey Rise Ranch, named after a covey of quail. His dad had raised quail dogs on that property, gorgeous bird dogs that he and his dad had spent hours working in those fields. Chip finally got the nerve to make them an offer, which they promptly turned down, but they did say they weren't in a hurry, and if anything changed for us financially, we should definitely reapproach them. Peggy left the farm and moved into her new villa, and she loved it. It was the perfect size, the perfect layout, and she loved the location. She just could not rave enough about that house. We were happy for her, but even as more offers came in for the sale of the villas, we weren't close enough to paying off our debt or making enough money to allow us to make a better offer on her property for ourselves. We continued to visit the property pretty often. The kids loved it. We loved it. We just wanted to hold on to our enjoyment of it as long as we could.